2 decades on The View, watching politicians, celebrities, and public figures squirm under her gaze. But on a Tuesday morning that would become legendary in daytime television, Whoopi Goldberg encountered something that tested even her legendary patience. A duchess so convinced of her own victimhood that she couldn't recognize an ally when she sat across from her. So defensive that every question became an attack. So entitled that she expected an EGOT winner to bow to her grievances. Meghan Markle walked onto The View expecting sympathy. What she got instead was a woman who's spent her entire life fighting battles that make Meghan's complaints look like inconveniences, and who had no intention of pretending otherwise. Within 25 minutes, the Duchess of Sussex would do something no guest had ever done on The View: storm off the set mid-interview, leaving behind stunned co-hosts and footage that would haunt her for years. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit subscribe and smash that like button. Now let's get into what really happened that morning. The View studio buzzed with its usual chaotic energy as the audience settled into their seats. The iconic table was set, coffee cups positioned, note cards arranged. Today's show promised to be special. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, had finally agreed to appear. Whoopi Goldberg sat at her usual spot, reviewing notes with a skeptical expression. She'd been doing this long enough to know when a guest was going to be difficult. And everything about Meghan's pre-interview demands suggested difficulty. The theme music played, the lights went up, and the show began. Welcome back to The View. We have a very special guest joining us this morning. She's a former actress, a duchess, a philanthropist, and one of the most talked about women in the world. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The applause was enthusiastic as Meghan emerged from backstage. She crossed the stage, greeted each co-host with brief hugs, and settled into the guest chair with the posture of someone expecting adoration. Meghan, thank you so much for being here, Whoopi said, her voice carrying its characteristic blend of warmth and directness. Thank you for having me, Meghan replied. But there was something in her tone, a subtle flatness that suggested she was already performing rather than connecting. So, let's start with the basics. How are you? Really? Not the PR answer, the real answer. Meghan tilted her head slightly, her expression shifting to something almost condescending. I'm wonderful. Thriving, actually. Though I find it interesting that everyone asks me that, they expect a different answer. Whoopi's eyebrows rose slightly. I ask because you've been through a lot. It's a genuine question, no hidden agenda. In my experience, there's always an agenda. In your experience with me, we've never met. Meghan paused, seeming to realize she'd started off on the wrong foot. I didn't mean you specifically. I meant generally. Generally, I'm just a woman asking another woman how she's doing. If that feels like an agenda, we might have a long morning. The audience chuckled. Joy and the other co-hosts exchanged glances. Meghan shifted in her seat, trying to recalibrate. I'm doing well. Really well. America has been good to us. Good how? Whoopi pressed. Good in that we have freedom here. Freedom to make our own choices, live our own lives, raise our children without constant institutional pressure. Whoopi nodded thoughtfully. Freedom's important, though I'd argue most Americans don't have the kind of freedom that comes with a $100 million Netflix deal and a Montecito mansion. Your freedom is a very specific kind. Meghan's expression cooled. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating. You have a level of financial security that most people watching this show will never experience. Your freedom is real, but it's also cushioned in ways that most people's isn't. That's worth acknowledging. I've acknowledged my privilege many times. Have you? Because every interview I've seen focuses on what you've lost, not what you have. The palaces you left, the family you lost, the scrutiny you faced. Those are real losses. But the gains don't seem to get equal airtime. Meghan's jaw tightened. The gains are obvious. The losses need to be explained. Or maybe the losses get more attention because they generate more sympathy. And sympathy generates more interest. And interest generates more revenue. The audience stirred. Whoopi had touched something real. The commercial value of victimhood. Joy Behar leaned in. Whoopi, let's give her a chance to... I'm giving her a chance. I'm giving her a chance to explain why every public appearance focuses on suffering when she's clearly living a life most people would envy. Meghan's voice took on an edge. Because the suffering was real. Is real. You don't escape trauma by moving to a different country. No, you don't. But you also don't process trauma by constantly performing it for audiences. At some point, the performance becomes the problem. Meghan leaned forward, her composure cracking slightly. This isn't performance. This is honesty. It can be both, Whoopi replied calmly. You can be honestly traumatized and also strategically sharing that trauma for commercial purposes. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I'm not here for commercial purposes. You have projects to promote, a foundation to support, a public image to maintain. Those are all commercial purposes. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone on this show has commercial purposes. But let's not pretend this is purely therapeutic. Meghan's face reddened. I'm trying to help people. Sharing my story helps people who've gone through similar things. Or does it help you? Because helping people and helping yourself can look very similar from the outside, and I'm not sure which one is primary for you. That's incredibly cynical. I've been in this business for 40 years. I've seen a lot of people claim they're helping others while primarily helping themselves. Cynicism is earned. Sarah Haynes tried to intervene. Meghan, why don't you tell us about the foundation work? I'd like to finish this point, Meghan interrupted, her voice sharp. Whoopi, you're accusing me of being self-serving while doing exactly what you accuse me of, using my appearance on your show to create controversy and generate ratings. Whoopi smiled slowly. The difference is, I'm not pretending otherwise. I know what I do. I know why I do it. I'm transparent about my commercial interests. Are you? Meghan opened her mouth, then closed it. Whoopi continued. I ask hard questions because that's my job. I don't pretend I'm providing therapy or saving lives. I'm an entertainer who occasionally stumbles into journalism. What are you? I'm someone trying to make a difference. In what? Specifically. I keep hearing about making a difference and important work, but I never hear specifics. What difference have you made? What has actually changed because of your foundation? We're addressing systemic issues. Which ones? Name one systemic issue you've changed. Not raised awareness about, actually changed. Meghan went silent. Whoopi leaned back. That's what I thought. The studio had gone quiet. The audience could feel the tension, could sense something unprecedented unfolding. Joy Behar jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. Let's talk about something more fun. The Met Gala just happened. You weren't there this year. Any thoughts? Meghan's expression flickered, a flash of something that might have been hurt before she composed herself. I wasn't invited. Oh? Joy seemed surprised. I assumed you just couldn't make it. You've been to major fashion events before. This year I wasn't on the list. Meghan's voice carried a forced casualness. These things happen. Whoopi tilted her head. Do they? Because the Met Gala invites pretty much every major celebrity. Anna Wintour personally curates the list. Not being invited seems pointed. I wouldn't characterize it as pointed. How would you characterize it? You're a duchess. You're a fashion icon, according to some publications. You've been on magazine covers around the world. Not being invited to the biggest fashion event of the year seems like a statement. Meghan's composure was cracking. I don't know why I wasn't invited. You'd have to ask Anna Wintour. I'm asking you. Do you have any theories? I don't speculate about other people's decisions. You've speculated extensively about the royal family's decisions. Why is Anna Wintour off limits? The audience stirred. Meghan's face had gone from red to pale. That's different. Is it? You've built your entire public narrative around speculating about what the palace did and why. But when it comes to being excluded from a fashion event, suddenly speculation is inappropriate? That seems convenient. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to soften the blow. Maybe there were just too many guests this year. There were fewer guests than previous years, Whoopi corrected. I looked it up. The list was smaller, not larger, which makes the exclusion more deliberate, not less. Meghan's voice rose. I don't think my Met Gala attendance is really the important topic here. You're right. It's not important in the grand scheme of things, but it is interesting, because it suggests maybe the Hollywood embrace you expected hasn't materialized the way you planned. Maybe the celebrity world isn't as welcoming as you thought it would be. Hollywood has been very welcoming. Has it? Because your Netflix projects keep getting canceled. Your Spotify deal ended badly. You're not being invited to major events. That doesn't sound like a welcoming embrace. That sounds like doors closing. The tension in the room was palpable now. Meghan's body language had shifted from practiced ease to barely contained agitation. Let's talk about Netflix, Whoopi continued. The animated series was canceled. Several documentary concepts were dropped. What's going on there? Meghan's expression hardened. Projects evolve. That's the nature of the entertainment industry. Evolve is a generous word for canceled. The trades reported that Netflix wasn't satisfied with the content being produced. That's not evolution. That's rejection. The trades sensationalize everything. They also report facts. And the fact is you signed a $100 million deal and haven't delivered what was promised. A company doesn't cancel projects when they're happy with the output. Our output has been significant. Has it? One documentary about your own lives. Some content that didn't make it to air. That's significant for $100 million? Meghan stood up slightly, then sat back down. A false start that betrayed her agitation. We're creating meaningful content that takes time. Time is one thing. Content is another. You've had years. What has materialized? Because from the outside, it looks like you took a lot of money and delivered not much. That's an incredibly unfair characterization, is it? I'm looking at the record. Spotify ended badly. Netflix projects are getting canceled. At what point do we stop blaming the companies and start examining whether maybe the problem is the product? Meghan's voice rose dangerously. The problem is people like you who refuse to give us a fair chance. I'm giving you every chance. I'm sitting here, asking you to explain what you've accomplished, and you can't give me a straight answer. That's not my failure. That's yours. Joy Behar attempted to redirect. Let's talk about Harry. How's he doing? The shift in Meghan's demeanor was immediate. Walls going up, expression closing off. I'd prefer not to discuss my husband. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Really? But he's half of everything you've built. The Netflix deal, the foundation, the public narrative, it's all joint. How can we discuss your life without discussing him? We can focus on my individual work. Which is what exactly? Because everything you've shared publicly involves Harry. The foundation is joint. The media appearances are joint. The brand is Sussex, not just Meghan. What's the individual work? Meghan paused, seemingly unable to answer. Whoopi continued gently. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm genuinely asking. You've positioned yourself as part of a team. When you remove the team from the conversation, what's left? I have my own identity. I'm sure you do, but you haven't shown it to the public. Everything we know about your post-royal life involves Harry. So when you say you don't want to discuss him, you're essentially saying you don't want to discuss your entire public existence. Meghan's voice sharpened. There are rumors I'd like to address, since you're bringing him up. Which rumors? The separation rumors. They're completely false. We're stronger than ever. Whoopi nodded. Good. Glad to hear it. Though I notice you brought up separation. I just asked how he was doing. Why did your mind go to separation? Meghan stiffened. Because that's what the tabloids are saying. I'm not the tabloids. I asked a simple question. You escalated to separation denials. That's interesting. It's not interesting. It's defensive. Because I'm tired of people asking about your marriage? Because you've invited those questions. The Netflix documentary, the interviews, the book, all of it centers on your relationship. You can't make your marriage the core of your brand and then complain when people ask about it. We're not a brand. You literally trademarked your names. You have a production company. You license your image. How is that not a brand? Meghan grabbed the armrests of her chair, clearly fighting the urge to stand up and leave. You know what I've noticed about American media? Everyone claims to be different from the British tabloids, But you all ask the same questions, make the same insinuations, pursue the same angles. Whoopi's expression shifted, becoming somehow both softer and more intense. Meghan, I'm a black woman in America. I've been called every name you can imagine. I've been discriminated against, harassed, threatened. I've watched my community face violence, injustice, and systemic oppression for my entire life. I understand struggle. What I don't understand is someone with your advantages complaining like she has none. My advantages don't negate my suffering. No, but they contextualize it. When you complain about not being invited to the Met Gala while sitting in a mansion that media money bought, people notice. When you claim your projects are being unfairly canceled while having had more opportunities than most people dream of, people notice. Context matters, Meghan. And your context is extremely privileged, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Meghan's voice rose. I've never denied my privilege. You've never really acknowledged it either. Not genuinely. Every acknowledgement comes with a but. I'm privileged, but I suffered. I have advantages, but I've faced challenges. The but always erases everything that came before it. Because the challenges are real. So are the advantages. Why do the challenges always get more airtime? Why does every interview focus on what you've lost instead of what you have? Why is your public narrative centered on suffering when you're living a life most people would consider paradise? Meghan sat stunned, seemingly unable to respond. Whoopi continued. The Met Gala doesn't invite you. You focus on that exclusion. Netflix cancels a project. You blame unfair treatment. People question your output. You call it persecution. At some point, you have to ask yourself, is everyone really against you? Or have you constructed a narrative where victimhood is more valuable than success? Meghan stood up fully now, her composure finally cracking. I don't have to sit here and be lectured. Whoopi remained seated, looking up at her with an expression of genuine concern rather than hostility. You're right. You don't. You can leave any time. But running away from uncomfortable questions is becoming a pattern, isn't it? Meghan's face contorted. I don't run away. You ran from the royal family. You ran from the UK. You run from any interview that doesn't go exactly the way you want. Standing in front of me right now, preparing to walk out. That's running, Meghan. I'm not running. I'm refusing to be disrespected. Who disrespected you? I asked you questions. Questions invited by making your life a public product. That's not disrespect. That's engagement. Your engagement feels very hostile. My engagement feels like what happens when someone actually pushes back. Most of your interviewers don't push back. They accept your framing, nod along with your narrative, let you say whatever you want without challenge. I don't do that. I ask follow-up questions. I point out contradictions. If that feels hostile, you've been interviewed by the wrong people. Joy Behar stood up, trying to mediate. Maybe we should take a break. I don't need a break, Meghan snapped. I need interviewers who aren't determined to twist everything I say. Whoopi shook her head slowly. I haven't twisted anything. I've repeated your own words back to you and asked you to explain them. If your own words sound twisted when I repeat them, maybe the original words are the problem. The studio had gone silent. The co-hosts watched with barely concealed shock. Meghan looked around, seeming to realize for the first time that the room wasn't on her side. The audience wasn't murmuring in sympathy. They were watching with the uncomfortable fascination of people witnessing something unprecedented. You've turned them against me, Meghan said, her voice shaking slightly. Whoopi's expression softened with what might have been genuine sympathy. I haven't turned anyone against you. I've asked you questions and let you answer them. The audience is responding to your answers, not my questions. They're responding to your framing. What framing? How are you? How are your projects? How's your husband? Where's the frame in that? I've literally asked the same things I'd ask any guest. You've treated them like attacks. The audience noticed. That's not framing. That's observation. Meghan grabbed her purse from beside the chair. This was supposed to be different. I was told you were sympathetic, that you understood what it's like to be scrutinized. Whoopi's expression shifted, becoming more serious, more personal. I do understand scrutiny. I've been in this industry for 40 years. I've been criticized for everything. my appearance, my opinions, my choices. I know what it feels like to have people judge you constantly." She paused. "But I also know the difference between unfair criticism and legitimate questions. And I've learned to engage with both without treating everyone as my enemy. You haven't learned that, Meghan. And until you do, every interview is going to feel hostile to you, because you're bringing the hostility with you." "I'm not hostile." "You've been hostile since you sat down. Before I asked a single question, you were already defensive. You came in here expecting a fight, and when you didn't get one, you invented one." "I didn't invent anything." "You invented my hostility. It doesn't exist. I've been warm, curious, and direct. But none of that matters because you've decided that anyone who doesn't agree with everything you say is against you. That's not the world, Meghan. That's a prison you've built for yourself." Meghan's voice dropped to something cold. "You have no idea what I've been through." "You're right. I only know what you've told me. And what you've told me, through your words and your behavior, is that you're deeply unhappy, deeply defensive, and deeply convinced that the whole world is your enemy." "I'm happy. I'm thriving. I've said that repeatedly." "You've said it, but you haven't shown it. Happy people don't get angry when asked about their lives. Thriving people don't treat every question as an attack. You keep telling me you're doing well, but everything about your behavior suggests the opposite." "My behavior is a response to your questions. My questions have been gentle. How are you finding America? What are you working on? How's Harry?" Those are literally the kindest questions a host can ask. And you've reacted to all of them as if I'm accusing you of something. Because the subtext— There is no subtext. There's just text. You've projected hostility onto neutral questions because that's what you expect. And when you expect hostility, you find it everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. Meghan stood frozen for a moment, caught between her desire to leave and the awareness that leaving would prove Whoopi's point. "I'm going. That's your choice. But before you go, I want to say something." Meghan paused, perhaps curious despite her anger. Whoopi's voice was warm but firm. "I think you're in pain. Real pain. I think you've been through difficult things, and I think some of your criticism has been genuinely unfair. But I also think you've built so many walls that you can't tell the difference between enemies and friends anymore. I'm not your enemy, Meghan. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to understand you. And you made that impossible." "You don't understand." "I wanted to. You didn't let me. Every time I reached for connection, you pulled back. Every time I asked for clarity, you accused me of attacking. That's not my failure. That's yours." Meghan walked toward the exit. At the edge of the set, she turned back for one final statement. "You know what's sad, Whoopi? I'm here because I thought you might understand. You've faced discrimination. You've been treated unfairly. I thought there might be some common ground." Whoopi nodded. "There could have been. But common ground requires honesty from both sides. You've been performing since you walked in. Every answer calculated. Every response measured for maximum sympathy. That's not honesty. That's strategy. And I don't have common ground with strategy. I haven't been performing. You've been performing your whole life. That's not an insult. It's an observation. You were an actress. You learned how to present yourself, how to read audiences, how to deliver lines. And now you can't turn it off. Every interview is a performance. Every public appearance is a scene. The problem is, when everything is performance, nothing is real. And people can tell." Meghan's face twisted with barely suppressed rage. "You're wrong about me. Maybe, but I don't think so. And neither does anyone who's been paying attention." Meghan turned and walked off the set. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor until a door slammed in the distance. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Whoopi turned to face her audience, her expression a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Well, that happened." She took a breath. "I want to say something to everyone watching. That was not the interview I wanted to have. I came in here hoping to connect with someone who's clearly been through a lot. I wanted to understand her perspective, maybe even find common ground." She shook her head slowly. "What I got instead was someone who couldn't engage with even the gentlest questions without treating them as attacks. And that makes me sad. Not angry. Sad." Because somewhere in there is a person who's hurting, and she's built so many walls that no one can reach her anymore, the audience murmured sympathetically. I'm not going to trash her. That's not who I am. But I will say this. Kindness and curiosity aren't threats.